Hello, welcome to the Health In Show, an affiliate program of Homeopathy World Community. You've come to the right place to tune in and participate with your comments and questions. Love is the greatest healer of all. But sometimes, in order to change our emotions, we must take action in other spheres of our lives. We speak with experts in alternative and complementary health fields and hope you will benefit in some small or great way. Remember, you are wherever your thoughts are. Make sure your thoughts are where you want to be.
And welcome to another edition of the Health In Show. We are very excited to have you with us today. And we have a great show ahead for us. We have award-winning scientist and professionally published author and neurodevelopmental specialist, Sue Cook, with us today. Welcome to the show, Sue. Just some housekeeping before we get started. Marilyn is not with us today, unfortunately. I will be doing the housekeeping. If you would like to call in to the show, just remember that you will call in via Skype using Computers 2K Voice to do that, or you can call in with a phone number. It's 919-518-9773, and it's voice only, so you don't need to worry about that. There's also a chat box. You can ask questions, leave comments, and we will definitely get to them during the show if we can. So again, welcome to the show, Sue, and we're so happy to have you here. Just start us off. Tell us a bit about yourself.
So I was really ill when I was young, and I was trying to go to Brighton Uni to do a degree in 3D design, but life took a different turn and I got glandular fever. And because it was a virus, they told me there's no cure. So I I thought, well, this isn't very much fun. And I nearly died and nearly choked to death. And when I came out the other side of that, I thought, well, I don't like the idea of there not being any answers for this. I'm going to go and start studying. So I started investigating herbs. And because this was way before the internet, back in the early 80s. And I started studying herbs. And then someone sent me to a homeopath. So I'd got IBS by then in my mid-20s when I was a stressed out journalist. And my first remedy was Nux Form, and it changed my life. And she said to me after many conversations, you should train in homeopathy. So I did. I went and studied on the world's first degree course in it. And that was awesome. Absolutely loved my course. And then a couple of years later, my first son came along. And being an experienced auntie of 10 nieces and nephews, I looked at my baby and I thought, something's not quite right here. And he turned out to be off the scale dyslexic. He had really severe learning issues. But before that, before we got that diagnosis, when he was a baby, he wouldn't bend in the middle. He would just lie flat and he wouldn't sit up or anything. And at 3 months old, he'd wiggle across the floor on his back. And at 8 months, he'd walk for 2 hours a day. And by 18 months old, we'd walk all day, 9 to 5. So he just used to talk to me. We used to talk about science. And he could, some bizarre thing, I don't know where it was coming from, he could discuss degree level quantum physics as a 3-year-old. He didn't get it from me because I still don't know any quantum physics.
Wow.
And then, so after his diagnosis of extreme dyslexia, my father, who at the time was a dyslexia teacher, having retired, he did that in his retirement. He said to me, Sue, there's no cure. You have to learn to live with it. And I thought to myself, no one tells me what's curable or not curable. I've learned before that things are curable. So I thought, I'm going to investigate this. Mm-hmm. So I did. And I spent 3 days sitting at my computer, Googling, and I found a website that just lit my heart up, really. And I read all the articles on it, and then I emailed them. And in the morning, there was a response back. And this person called Svea, I didn't know what gender that was or anything, started talking to me. And we built this friendship. And Svea turned out to be, at the time, an 82-year-old German Jew who'd escaped Hitler when she was 14 and was now living in Oregon in America. And so we developed this friendship for the next 5 years, really, until she died. And she taught me neurodevelopment, but only because I did what she said to help my son, and he completely changed. He changed from that child that was up my skirt going, "Mommy, mommy, get me out of here. Don't look at anyone. Don't talk to anyone. Just get me out of here," who was uneducatable, to being really chilled and able to learn. So because of the dramatic change in him, all these people started calling me. And then that turned into an accidental practice. And that was 16 years ago. So since then, I've worked with thousands of families, written loads of books, written loads of courses, and that's just been the most bizarre journey. I could never have imagined what was going to happen. And so for the last 12 years, I've been training people as well on how to do neurodevelopment. So that's me in a nutshell.
It's truly an incredible story. And I think it's interesting that generally speaking, not always, but generally speaking, it's the mother fighting to not have a label on a child that moves things forward and then helps other people. So it's an incredible story. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. So tell us a bit about neurodevelopment and how working with kids or adults can really, really help open them up. The way you described it, your son changed. How did?
Oh my God, incredible! Yeah, it was amazing. So finding out why things weren't working. So the wonderful Svea, she sent me a little screening, which was basically 10 little tasks to do on him to see how he performed. But I didn't do them on him straight away. I did them on me. I did them on my ex-husband, so his father. I sent one to my mum in France, and I did one on my dad, and then I did my ex-husband's parents. So before I even got near my son, I'd screened 6 people, or however many people that is. And I realized that my ex-husband's family were all neurotypical. My dad had ADHD. I thought, oh, that explains it. That explains Christmas, when my sister rings me at 10 o'clock going, "He's just arrived, but he's going to stay for coffee and be around to you." Like, okay. So, and then he'd come round to me and go, "Well, I should get home before it gets dark, really." And that was Dad. So he was awesome. But yeah, I had a bit of that going on. My mother and my sister, everyone in my family is dyscalculate, including me. And I thought, okay, so his issues seem to have come from me. So it's my job to sort this out. So I screened him, and by now I'd had a lot of practice. He literally could not track with his eyes. Do you know what tracking is? I'll explain in case you do know, because there might be people watching who don't know. So
Definitely.
If I move forward and keep my head still, keep my chin still, and if I follow my finger, you should be able to see my eyes moving. Yeah? That's tracking. So we need to be able to track, to be able to read a line of text and jump down to the next line. We need to be able to track to walk downstairs or perform any physical task. His tracking wasn't working at all. And I thought to myself, goodness me, that's bad. So you can see that was one reason why he was dyslexic. Another reason why was that his pupils were too big. So there's way too much light going in. So everything was dazzly. It's a bit like having snow blindness, being outside without sunglasses on, and it's like, So that's why he couldn't look at paper. But the other reason he couldn't look at paper was he had Erlen syndrome. Have you heard of that?
No, please tell us.
Well, Erlen syndrome, I'll give you the science for it first, and then I'll explain it. So if you imagine that this here is the retina at the back of the eye, and then light, which is in waves, comes along, goes through the eye, hits the retina at the back of the eye, and then travels down the optic nerve, and it travels to the visual cortex at the back of the head, where it gets retranslated into an image. Well, in a neurotypical person, so somebody who doesn't have a learning issue or Erlen syndrome, and I forget which way around this is, it's big cells for color and small cells for movement. And when in a neurotypical eye, when that hits the back of the eye, you have no issues around contrast. But in somebody who's got Erlen syndrome, the small cells for color and the big cells for movement create problems with contrast. And I had this when I was a child. So I couldn't look at yellow paper with black writing on it. It would give me an instant headache. And my son couldn't look at white paper with black writing on, because it would just dazzle him. And when I was tired as a child, I always loved to read. Once I learned to read at 8, so I was very late. When I was tired, the words would spiral a bit, but the word I was actually looking at would be blank. There'd be no word there. And I thought, oh, well, Sue, it's time for bed. Just that's your sign, it's time for bed. And I would just go to sleep. Mm-hmm. So that was another problem he had, which is fixed, and mine's fixed now. I'll tell you what happened. When he was a bit older, we had it was probably around the same time, actually. We got the Erlen lady to come in and fix us up with glasses. I don't know if you've seen these people with coloured lenses, because that's for Erlen syndrome. Okay. So my favourite colour is purple. And I was playing with all these purple lenses because they're my favourites. And I was holding them up in front of my eyes. They're all individual lenses. Mm-hmm. I was holding them up in front of my eyes. And all of a sudden, I picked up these two. And it was like all the sound in the room went calm. And if you're in a room without carpets or curtains, it's all a bit jangly. But if you're in a room with carpets, everything's soft. It was like that, but in an instant when I put these lenses up to my eye. And I said to her, I think I found my colours. And she said to me, if you think that's good, go outside and have a look. I thought, that's a bit odd. I wonder what's going to be better outside. So I went outside and I was looking at all these plants thinking, yeah, nothing amazing yet. And then I looked up at the clouds and I mean, knocked me down with a feather. Clouds were 3D. They were great big puffy things. No one had ever told me that. I thought clouds were like flat, like cut out paper ones stuck to the bowl of the sky. And here were all these clouds hanging in the air. And I thought, I never knew that. What a shock that was. So that was another thing that my son had. And what's the other thing was he had no 3D vision. So his eyes weren't working together. He had no depth perception. Right. And so you'd say over there, but over there didn't mean anything to him. There was no ability to be able to see distance or gauge depth, which was kind of shocking for me at the time. And there were a whole load of other issues going on. His hemispheres weren't communicating with each other and things like that. And I thought to myself, how do you get out of bed in the morning, poor child, let alone try and function at a day in school where you have to sit at a desk and do ready things when you haven't got any of that going on. So it was a hell of a shock. And I started doing the exercises because it's physical. The brain learns through movement. So I started doing the physical exercises with him. And I think it was like the second day or so, I was explaining to my ex-husband, because I mean, I didn't know what I was doing back then. I didn't have a me teaching me, which, I was like learning in the dark from emails that I was getting from the other side of the world. Mm-hmm. And I was explaining to my ex-husband, Toby can't track, doing all this. And Toby, my son, he was standing 10 feet away and he went, Mummy, I can do it from there. And I'm like, great. So we were tracking from 10, 15 feet, getting his eye muscles to move. And then within 3 days, he could do it here. And once his tracking had kicked in, that completely changed his life. He now had an ability to feel more like, imagine if you are sitting in the room like you are, and you get up and you walk across the room, you know that the room's still and you're walking through it, even if you're jumping up and down. Whereas if your tracking isn't working and all of that, it's like every time you take a step, the whole world bounces. Mm-hmm. And that was his experience. So his life was a lot more comfortable once he got tracking, and it took him 3 weeks to get 3D vision, and that was just mind-blowing. We used to do the program with him every night. Well, I did it. Mm-hmm. And we'd just done the program, and we're sitting on my bed. We had this very big bedroom and a big sleigh bed, and the room was very tidy and no junk in there. And so there was our feet at the end of the bed and the wall. And all of a sudden he started going, Mummy, look! Oh my God, look! And he was like 6 at the time. And I'm going, is this good or is this bad? He was going, look. And it was I was starting to get a bit freaked out. And I said to him, tell me, is it good? And he went, Mummy, he said, my feet are in front of the end of the bed, and the end of the bed is in front of the wall. And I said, you've got reading vision. That's so exciting. And he went, it's amazing. And he said, will it go away? And I went, no, not if you keep doing the exercises. You've got to make the nerve connections stay. And he was going, this is brilliant. And then he looked at my bedside cabinet, which is all, you know, how us girls are, lotions and potions and books and piles of stuff. And he went, oh, he says, it's so complicated. and that was just a really cute moment 3 weeks in. And it was literally life-changing. But because he was starting to get all these visual abilities that he didn't have before, he calmed right down and started being happier instantly. And that's one of the lovely side effects of neurodevelopment. And all of the other mums were going, it was like they were all doing this. What have you been doing with Toby? And I went, don't know, I'm just following instructions at the moment. And so then my phone started ringing. And women
before, sorry, not to cut you off, but I think that there was a really important thing that you said in there that I do want to touch on, and I want to talk a little bit more about it before you continue, for sure. The brain-body connection, the idea that there's something wrong with a part of our bodies that can't be fixed, where if you make those connections, and as you said in the beginning, you're a homeopath as well. Sometimes it's a remedy that makes that connection. Sometimes it's doing, little tasks every day. So, and the world of a difference it made for your son it's just incredible. So, yeah. Sorry, continue. I did want to point that out.
Yeah, absolutely. It was incredible. And touching on exactly that point, there's nothing like an anxious mother who's worried about their child to sort stuff out. I'm not saying dads don't do the same. They very much do. However, I'm a mum, so it was this mum that was doing that. And there was nothing that was going to stop me. Oh my goodness, I didn't half get criticism. My ex-husband's father said to me, don't do this, you're going to give him a complex, you don't know what you're messing with. And my dad was like, there's no cure, Sue, you have to learn to live with it, you need to stop it. And I just thought, I'm not going to listen, I'm not going to let these people upper limit me, I'm not going to listen, my child's not happy and he takes precedence. And so I went for it anyway. And I said to them both, I said, I don't care if I fail, I have to try. And it took a lot of courage to stand up to these big men at the time, because I was really pioneering this for us, and I didn't know anyone who did neurodevelopment. It's not like I could just go and visit someone, and so I think that's what's made me so passionate to help other people. It's like they can have a me now, but I didn't have a me. All these other mums who've got children with issues, and you're worried sick about them, and because the brain learns through movement. All of this is copying so every single neurotypical person on the planet throughout time and space, except for certain tribes people who never put their babies on the ground, who live in jungles, that's completely different. All of the movements that babies do in utero are the same across the world throughout space and time. And so if there's been a break in development and children have these issues, or grown-ups, because I'm dyscalculate, well, not so much now, having done years of this, but there's been a break in development, and unless you repeat the movements that that got missed or broken, then they never get another chance to happen on their own. And that's what we do with neurodevelopment.
And a question about that, is there if you notice something that is going on with your child, is there a good age gap to do this work? Can it always be done?
Yeah, it can always be done. Yeah, and that's the wonderful thing about it. So I work with grown-ups and all sorts of people. So the bulk of my practice over the past 16 years has been children aged probably 6 to 15, mostly under 10s, because they go to school and then something's clearly wrong and then they end up with me. Girls are harder to work with as teenagers. They're far more resistant to doing neurodevelopment, and they tend to also hold it together more. They can hide because of the way the corpus callosum is in girls. It tends to be slightly bigger. We can mask much better than boys, so we can hide what's going on with us, whereas boys, it's far more obvious. And so there tends to be a bit of a crisis for girls before exams. And so I tend to get a lot of that and cramming kids through to help them get their exams sorted, and it works pretty well. But adults as well. I mean, I've worked with somebody who paralyzed herself at the age of 17, who was paralyzed, but she could walk, but she couldn't really feel herself. And I was helping her get her muscles to work better by reprogramming everything, and that worked quite well. And I've also worked with early onset dementia. I had one patient at 57 who no longer knew what door handles and taps were for. And I got her sorted out in 3 months. She was driving, so that was pretty cool. So yeah, neurodevelopment, because the brain is plastic and it's all about nerve growth factors. So Rita Levi-Montalcini won a Nobel Prize in 1986 for her work with nerve growth factors. That was pretty amazing. So that was the missing link between, we know that moving does something, and that's why. So it's magic. The brain is completely amazing, and it's a capacity to rebuild itself. Yeah, it's mind-blowing.
Yeah, the brain is truly an incredible thing.
It really is, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so. And yes, I've heard that even with neurodivergent women, it's very difficult to diagnose neurodivergency in women versus in men.
Yeah, because a lot of the tests were done on men, well, boys early on. And so we know it's like heart attacks in men are very different from heart attacks in women. So we know what the symptoms are for men. And because girls tend, obviously I'm generalizing, but I'm trying not to, tend to be a little bit quieter in class, not always, but sometimes, then they can slip through the cracks and not get their needs met. So I'm all for shouting about it and say, come on, let's sort you out then if you've got an issue you're not happy with. If you're happy with how you are, no problem. But, you know, a lot of the little ones I see aren't happy, and they're used to being told off, they're used to struggling, they're used to not understanding what's going on and so on. And so, you know, they want some help getting these primitive reflexes inhibited, then they come to me, and it's just been the most amazing journey. The mums all say to me, oh, Sue, you're like half mad scientist and half children's entertainer in the clinic, because I make it fun. You know, nobody wants to be, nobody wants to be wrong or highlighted. So they all come in, you know, the nan, the granddad, the dog, and all their brothers and sisters, and they all come into my clinic. They're all welcome. And I make it into a sort of game. So I don't say to the child, right, child, you're the broken one. We're all going to do those tests on you and fix you. It's never like that. So I'll say to them something like, I hear you're quite interested in science. Shall we find out some things that even your teachers don't know at school about how the brain works? But shall we test it on granddad? And I go, yes. And then mummy. And so I make a big thing of like playing with everybody else. And so the spotlight's not on them. And then I like pretend to move on, maybe. And they'll go, well, aren't you going to test me? And I'm like, oh, right then. But once you've got over that point, then they're coachable, they're workable with, and then you don't have to, you know, but it's still fun. I always make everything fun, and nothing's a test, everything's a game. Who wants to play this game with me? And it's just all very light. So yeah, we have a lot of fun in the clinic.
So I did mention at the beginning that you're also an author. I wanted to know what books, if someone who is thinking about let's start with this. Someone that's thinking about training, where do you have a book to help them kind of get started with that, see if it's right for them, something that they want to do or read up on a bit more?
So I'll start with the first book I wrote. It's called Nutrition for Special Needs. And I wrote that because back in the 70s, my dad had, because he had ADHD, he had all these food allergies. And mum put us all on an elimination diet to work out what was wrong with dad. And we worked that out. So we spent the whole of 1 year all on funny diets. We all went on it. And so I learned when I was a child about the importance of food. And I always seem to be saying the same thing to my parents in the clinic. So I wrote that. So that's a handbook for parents who are dealing with kids. Maximize Your Child's Potential is just a lot of articles and speeches I've given. So that's There's all sorts of interesting things in there. So that's quite an interesting one for parents. I've also written another one, but I've sold out. It's called Eat for Your Brain, and that's on superfoods that work directly on your brain. I've written other ones as well, but I haven't got them to hand. This is the manual. So the Brain Buzz manual. So this is how you rewire a brain. And I've just been training people. So this is my latest one. I always update it. Wonderful book. I've written 5 courses as well. So if people want to learn more, I suppose they could start at my YouTube channel, which is The Child Brain Whisperer, or they could look at my books or my website, which is Brain Buzz, BrainBuzz.co.uk, and or email me if they want more information. I also train people in neuro, as I said, in person, so they'd get one of those manuals. And I also have the course so that people can train online in neurodevelopment. So it's pretty fun. It's a pretty fun thing to do.
And tell me a bit about have you used homeopathy in your practice as well to help at all while doing the neurodevelopment work?
Sometimes. I tended to stick to neuro. So in a 2-hour session with one of my little neuro patients, it would probably take an hour to screen them and an hour to show them what to do. But if I was to screen you, assuming you're neurotypical, I could screen you in 10 minutes and show you what to do in 5. But because somebody with learning issues takes much, much longer and you have to explain things, it takes a much longer time. Remind me your question, because I think I've gone off track there.
No, that's so in terms of using homeopathy as well.
Oh, yeah. So there's not enough time usually in a neuro session. But the woman with dementia, I did, because I screened her, I gave her nutrition, and I gave her homeopathy. So sometimes, but a lot of my little ones are very tuberculinum, very carcinosin, very phosphorus, that sort of demographic. And so I would treat them sometimes if it was relevant. So yeah, it's joyous actually.
Yeah. I can only imagine seeing. I mean, as a homeopath that has worked with kids that have attention deficit disorder and stuff like that, to see the unfolding, the kind of coming together is definitely a magical thing, and especially for the parents too. And so in terms of working with children and working with people, and as you said, it can take a little bit longer because there's often an inability or a difficulty rather than inability, a difficulty with focusing. So taking that time, what does a session with you look like?
So I always make sure that the child arrives not hungry, in trousers, and I always know everybody's names. I always make sure that I greet everybody, and I warn the mum and dad. I say, I'm going to treat you like old friends, because then your child will feel more comfortable with me, rather than me going, what was your name, daddy? But I often call them mummy and daddy in the session anyway, because it's just adds an element of humor. So I keep it lighthearted. Sometimes we've had cake and tea on the floor if it's called for it, because it sometimes that's been appropriate. So and one little girl, she decided, it was when I had a huge clinic over in a town in the next county a long time ago now, probably 12 years ago. She decided that she wanted to conduct the whole of the session underneath a pile of chairs all piled up with a blanket over. So that was the castle from Frozen. And we were going to do the entire thing being princesses inside this castle made of chairs and blankets. It was great fun. So yeah, that's just what we do. So whatever needs doing is the answer. But if it's a straightforward case, I will, make fun of how we're doing this screening. And I just record what they're doing in between. And then I show them what to do. And I have it all on video. I have all of the exercises on these lovely cards, which are, really lovely quality with all the pictures and instructions plus video, so that they get all corners covered. I worked out that was the easiest way to manage my cases if I made it really super easy for them. And also it's minimum equipment. So I always gave them a pen torch they need a torch for one of the eye exercises. And aside from that, you pretty much just need a floor. So you can do it anywhere. You can do neurodevelopment anywhere, and it's affordable, and you don't need fancy equipment. So that's what a screening looks like. But often when you've screened a child, especially one who's got lots of stuff going on, they will just literally fall asleep on the floor. So you won't be able to show them the exercises. So I just put a blanket on them and show their mum and dad what to do and let them rest, because it's really bizarre. It's so tiring just doing this little thing, because while you're being screened, your brain's starting to make connections that you haven't made before, and it just knocks them out. So bless their little hearts, they just get wrapped up, put on a sofa, and allowed to sleep while I carry on to show their parents what to do.
That's incredible. And so in terms of can you talk a little bit more about as children are making the connections, do those connections show in a different way? I mean, you talked about how your son, realized that his 3D started coming into focus. Yeah. Does it present differently in different children? What are the type of things that you tell the parents of your patients or clients to have a look at or keep an eye out for when they're working with you? So
I say to them, depending, because I've done thousands of screenings and everyone screens differently. Some people have very similar results, but there's always, very, very rarely do you see two people the same. And somebody every now and again will come in and bring a new thing that I've not seen, the way they perform in the tasks. So what I think the first thing is that they do the exercises and they're calmer. They just feel calmer. Sometimes you get a child who doesn't want to cooperate. So what we do there is we give them a sticker chart or a star chart, and they work towards a goal, either a daily goal or a weekly goal or a 2-monthly goal or something, whatever seems to work for that child, so that they'll do the program. But I had pretty good compliance because of the way I explained it during the session. So I said to them, if you want to be better at sport, happier at school and able to do the things you want to do that you're struggling with, and this is the path to do it. So I had pretty good compliance from my little ones. And if the tracking was a bit tricky, what I say to them is say they could cope with 10 seconds of tracking. I'd say do 8 seconds, and then build it up in a week to 9, and then 10, and then you'll be able to go 15, because this is building nerve and muscle connections. It's exhausting, and we don't want to upset the child. So go gently, But some of them race through it. I had one boy who went through the entire program in about 3 months. Normally it takes about 6 to 9 months, but just depending on how much they've got going on. One of my boys, he was actually my first paying customer for neurodevelopment. He was 6, and at 5 he'd been diagnosed with autism and a nervous breakdown, and he was drawing dead bodies all the time. And the family were lovely, and they were really anxious. He was the youngest of 3, and I'd already at this point screened about 100 people. So you always feel like you know what you're doing, and then the first one that's paying you comes in. It's like, oh my God, I'm so out of my depth. What have I done? I'm an idiot. And then this child just hid under my desk and was rocking, and I'm like, oh, I don't know what to do. Like, Sue, you do know what to do. Just do it. And I thought, oh yeah, I do know what to do. So I just did what I do. And Joss, oh my God, I said his name, I shouldn't. He was just absolutely brilliant. He went home, he did the program, and it was just life-changing. And he went back to the doctor who had diagnosed autism, and he said, well, he's not autistic anymore. What have you been doing? And he goes, well, we've been to see Sue. And he goes, well, she's amazing and all this. And so he was undiagnosed with autism, although people have told me that's not possible. I'll argue with Dr. Pork in London then. And so Joss grew. His dad is really, really tall. And when Joss was a teenager, he grew and grew and grew. And his nerves were no longer working, and everything had gone, jangly. And he said, Mum, I think I need to see Sue. So she called me up. She said, Sue, will you come round? I went, yeah. So I went round, and he was like, instead of being this little 6-year-old, he's this giant of 6'6" or something. And he's going, Sue, I really need to see you. And I thought, I can see that. So we put him back on the program for a few weeks, and it just sorted him out. So yeah, it's it's just been a really interesting, unexpected journey of just bizarre experiences, amazing experiences.
It really points out how incredible working with children is.
Oh yeah.
I know that there are often people who can find it daunting. I work with families as well, and kids they're incredible. You get to see them, come into their own and be happy, and sometimes they teach you things. That's something that I find all
every
the
day.
time. It's like they teach you so much about your own life. It's like a therapy
Yeah.
session for you when you hang out with the kids.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. One thing I always tried to do with mine was leave them, when they leave me at the end of the session, they feel like they have hope and they know what they're doing and they have a goal that they can manage. And that was a really good feeling for me. It was empowering. It was fun. It made me feel good. I absolutely thoroughly enjoyed it. And literally the only reason I was doing it is because people kept coming back. They were recommending me to everyone. I never set out to help anyone other than my son. And it's just been the most bizarre journey. I only do it because they want me to. And then they wanted me to teach them. I better write a program then. So I never kind of planned any of it. It was just a response to what happened, which is bizarre.
I mean, I think that's how a lot of us get into this healing world.
Yeah.
We're not okay with the answers we've been given, so we reach out and we figure out something that does work, and we use it, and then we use it to help other people. So.
Oh yeah, that is so the truth. Absolutely, it really is, isn't it? Especially with homeopathy, because I was told when I had glandular fever, there's no cure. I was told when I had IBS, there's no cure. I was told when my son had learning issues, there's no cure. I don't have IBS anymore, and I've got over my glandular fever, chronic fatigue, and my son got I don't know however many it was, over about a dozen GCSEs. He got all his A levels, and he's just left college, the university, with a music degree. As a child, they said couldn't be educated, so there.
That's it. So I definitely want to touch on so you talked about tracking. Tracking is one of the first things you can use to see if there is something going on. Would there be anything else easy or simple that a parent can do at home to see if they do need to pick up the phone and give you a call?
Yeah, so one thing you could do, if your child's pupils are massively dilated and they don't contract in the light, that's a massive problem. And it's a part of the brain called the pons that controls that. So that the pons, it has got an issue. So that needs to be stimulated to make the pupils start responding to light. So I can show them how to do that. 3D exercises. So what you can do is you can hold up your finger and you say to the child, touch the top of my finger. And if they can't do it and they're all like that, like my son did, then their eyes aren't yoked. So what else? So tracking pupil contraction. You might also check their hemispheric dominance. So at 7, usually around 7, hemispheric dominance is set. So I'll do this with you now. So are your feet flat on the floor?
No, they can't.
Yeah, so if you put your feet flat on the floor and you pick up your foot and draw a C in the air, a letter C. Okay. And you went for your right foot, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah. And I'm just going to throw you an imaginary ball, okay? I want you to catch the ball like that and then catch it, throw it back to me with one hand. Okay, you've used your right hand. Do you write with your right hand? Yeah.
I do.
Okay. So now I'm going to hand you a really heavy telescope. I'm just going to pass it to you through the screen. Take the telescope and then hold it up to one of your eyes and look through it. So you've gone to your right eye again.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'll give it back to me. Don't drop it. It's heavy.
No.
Okay. Thank you. Mustn't break the telescope.
Very expensive to replace.
I know, right? I know. They take months to reorder. So and now hello. Yes. You want to speak to Chantal? Yes. So so you're using your right ear. So you're well lateralized along your right hand side. So I'm the exact opposite. So left, 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 left. So then I would say to you, so this is when you do it with a child, you might need to do more tests, more to repeat it more just to check. But you're well lateralized, so it's easy for you. If the child has got stuff going on the left and stuff going on the right, then they've got mixed dominance. That's not ideal. But if they're well lateralized, the next question is, so I'm a lefty and I've got a very dominant right brain. I'm massively creative. I sew, I knit, I write books, I make jewelry. In fact, I'm not wearing any today. I don't know how calm I normally am. Got loads of bracelets and necklaces on. I write story. I'm a creative. I design gardens, as well as being a healer. So my right hemisphere is dominant. And so the question to you is, are you massively creative, or are you a linear, ordered, and did you fly through school without any problems? Because left-handers like me with a dominant right hemisphere, school's not designed for me. It's designed for, are you the more ordered person or the more creative?
So when it comes to that, I'm actually a mixture of both. I like a lot of
Oh,
order,
interesting.
and I am very creative.
Oh, that's cool. So I imagine that your left hemisphere is dominant, but your brain is well balanced. So school is designed for people like you with right side of the dominant left hemisphere, and so the way people like you, in theory, think, I'm not saying you, but most of the time. So if you're learning the alphabet, you'd need to learn letter A, letter B, letter C, letter D, and so on through to Z. And that's how you learn in an ordered, linear fashion. That causes massive anxiety to us left-handers because we think in an overview. So if I want to learn the alphabet, I need to know that there are 26 letters, 5 of them are vowels. All of the vowels have got multiple sounds. Some of the consonants blend together and make different sounds, like PH make a F, for example. And I need to know that, because if I can understand the parameters, the overview of what I'm looking at, then it makes it easier to go, oh, okay, I get it. Now I can learn the letter A. So people who are right brain dominant can really struggle going to school in a left-handed environment. So add that to a few learning issues and you've got problems. You've got some little problems going on there.
Yeah, and I mean, and from having this discussion with you right now in this moment, if I had a child that was more left brain, it would be very difficult for me to help them learn without the proper tools and understanding how all of that works. So that's also an important.
It's a kind of invisible condition. I mean, left-handers are 10% of the population, and a smaller percentage are girls. Like my mother and I are both left-handers, and we're both very well lateralized left-handers. But yeah, if you're in a right-handed family, you wouldn't even question it that somebody might need different scissors. I've got my wonderful left-handed scissors here. I've been sewing today, and I have a left-handed ruler, and I have left-handed knives, and I have all sorts of wonderful left-handed gadgets, and that makes my life comfortable rather than difficult by trying to use right-handed ones. Right. One of the chapters in Maximize Your Child's Potential is on handedness. So it's just such an interesting subject, just handedness itself and the impact that has on learning. But mixed dominance is like having 2 drivers in the car. That doesn't work because this hemisphere wants to go to Helsinki and this hemisphere wants to go to Aberystwyth. And it's like, oh, we're not getting anywhere. So it can trip the brain, cause problems to be poorly lateralized. So that's something that we try and sort out gently to, encourage a good lateralized brain.
And I do have a question actually from the chat here. What about, Richard made a comment. He said he understands being left-handed. And I think that a lot of people who have been around left-handed people do understand that it can be a struggle using right-handed things all the time. Yeah. And then from Amnon, what about people who are ambidextrous?
Well, the thing is, if they are ambidextrous from having a learning issue, so that's one thing. But I have met people who don't have any learning issues at all, and they seem to be, but it's quite rare actually. But so it might be that they just are like that, or it might be that there's a latent learning issue or a developmental issue going on. The only way you could really assess that is by screening them and finding out if they've got any glitches in the way that they've done skills. But I hate to cast aspersions on people who are ambidextrous, because some of the most genius people I've met are, proper ambidextrous, and they don't have any learning issues. Very amazing people. So yeah, it doesn't mean that they're wrong or broken at all.
And as we start wrapping up, I did want to talk a bit about your training. So what does your training look like? And you said people can start by watching your videos on YouTube, and we'll definitely leave that information on the video when we post it. And you have a website, but if I register for your training, what does that look like? What type of time am I looking at?
So if you were to train in person with me, I've always done it over 5 days, and we normally work from sort of 9:30 to 4, because it's quite tiring after that. You're learning, and we learn by doing, so it's very practical. And the manual is written, so you don't need to take any notes. So what we do is we spend probably a day screening each other. And that's a really interesting process when somebody comes in, because most of the people, not most, but majority of the people I've trained have got either children of their own with issues, or they've got issues, and a lot of them are homeopaths. And so we spend a lot of time looking at the detail, and then they get to do it. So they observe a screening, they have a screening, then they do screenings, and we just get practice on that and learning the glitches. And then I'll show them what to do to sort it out. Now, I think there are 5 stages of exercises to solve it. So a basic one, and then gradually, as your brain gets more sorted out, you go through the levels. And then we do the sciencey stuff. So why, what's going on in the brain? And it's not complicated. I keep it simple. There's no need to make it complicated, And it's a very potentized course. I'm a homeopath, it's going to be potentized, so they can learn a lot in a very short time. And that's why I've done the manual, because why do we have to sit down for months taking notes when we can just have the notes done and just practice? And then I often take them for a walk, because I live 100 yards from the beach, and we'll go down to the beach and we'll just watch people walking, because you can see so much about somebody's neurostate from how they walk. Oh, look, you see, his arms are uneven, this arm's a bit funny, look at that gait, and you can, so what would that be about? And you kind of analyze it and look. So it's very hands-on, and it's very fun. And the aim, I've been on so many courses where you leave the course and you haven't got a clue what to do. You don't leave my course like that. You leave my course well practiced, in touch with me, and able to treat children straight away, because that's what's important. So it's very potentized. Yeah. And I've also got an online
incredible way to put it.
Yeah. All my stuff is on a course as well. So if anybody wants to do that, please let me know. And I'll put you in touch with my courses. And you can do that in your own time. And you can still talk to me if you've got an issue. What's going on here? I don't understand that. Okay, well, I'll explain it again. I'll do your own video. So I'm here, I'm here. Let's just help people.
That's amazing. So you have an online course, you have 5-day in person, and that is in the UK. So book a trip, come out and visit you if you're not in the UK, and make a week of it right by the beach. Is there anything that I didn't cover that you wanted to talk about really quickly before we wrap up?
I'm very approachable, and if anyone has any questions, please do ask. Even if you think that it's a silly question, I want to hear what you want. I want to know what your questions are. And if anyone wants my books, they are on Amazon, and I can send you the links for those. Eat for Your Brain is my bestseller. It's a great handbook for the clinic, for homeopaths, actually, because it's a bit like Louise Hay's You Can Heal Your Life. You just have a look either at your symptoms or for the superfood, and it cross-references to tell you what you need for that. It's just been such a good tool for my colleagues to have on their desk. And I wrote it because I didn't know what the superfoods were. And I thought, well, write the book then.
All of the tool, and this is a good reminder, good time to remind everybody that any tool that comes from a place of love and care is a good tool to have to help heal. And I would assume that is where you wrote your books from.
Yeah, because having nearly died at 19, I feel it changed my life. It put me on a path of healing from then on. And I take health and wellness very, very seriously. And I think while we have this knowledge, there's no need for anyone to suffer. And I grow my own herbs. I make my own deodorant. I make my own toothpaste. I've got courses on that, actually. I make my own potions and lotions. And I was harvesting cretaceous last week and making some potion from that. And because we know how, and it's a joy, isn't it? And if we can help people, then is there a greater blessing?
Absolutely not. It is one of the joys, I think, of our world as homeopaths and anybody who wants to heal the world, make the world a better place. So
exactly, it totally comes from a place of love.
Yes. So on that note, thank you so much, Sue, for being with us today. And I will make sure that if anybody has any questions or concerns or needs to get in contact with Sue, I will make sure that all of your information is up on our website as soon as possible.
Thank
you. If you can't find what you're looking for, you can always email me. It's Chanel@homeopathyworldcommunity.com. Sue, do you want to tell us your email address really quickly for everyone?
SueCook@brainbuzz.co.uk. Brainbuzz has 3 Z's.
All right. Go ahead.
Yep. And if you can't get hold of me there, try SueCook@protonmail.com. Although that's the one I use if people can't understand the Brainbuzz one. Yeah.
So perfect. So we'll make sure that all of Sue's contact information and her website and her YouTube channel, that's all up and available for you. And if you have any questions, you know where to reach us. As always, thank you to everyone for joining us. It was another incredible show. I want to also let everyone know that this Sunday, Homeopathy World Community is doing a book club with Anika Hoagland. I'm sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly. That will be at 10 a.m. this Sunday, the 15th of October. Almost forgetting what month it is because this year is rushing by us all. And then we also have a live event, getting through the holidays with difficult family members. I believe we do this one at least once a year. So this will be the one to get us prepped for Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's. So definitely join Ashley and Marilyn on October 27th at 1 p.m. All of these times are Eastern Standard Time. And if you have any issues getting in or reaching anyone, always feel free to reach out to me, Chanel, at homeopathyworldcommunity.com. Also, thank you to our wonderful producer, Amnon, for always making sure that we sound good and sit properly and go out live to you without any issues. Thank you, Amnon.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. All right. And we have a couple more minutes if anybody has any questions or comments. I do have a couple of comments here. Richard said a lot of presidents have been left-handed.
Yes.
And piano players tend to be more or less ambidextrous.
Yeah. Oh my God, musicians' brains are mind-blowing. Yeah, the connections between the 2 hemispheres. Yeah, like with my son, absolutely extraordinary. I'm in awe.
It is, and that would also fall under a learned, sometimes, not always, I would say, that is a learned connection. That is something that you teach yourself while you're training.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely amazing how musicians do all those different things with their hands. Oh my God, it's so impressive. My son tried to teach me piano for people who can't play piano, and I couldn't do it. And he was laughing his head off at me. Mummy, for goodness sake, because it just comes naturally to him. He's so talented.
Yeah,
I'm
I
in awe
mean,
of him.
I tried to learn how to play the drums, and the two hands, no problem. Adding the foot was a nightmare. So
Yeah,
yes, people who can play instruments are incredible. So
mind blowing, isn't it?
yes, very much so. All right. Thank you very much, Sue. It was a pleasure, and
Thank
we'd love to
you.
have you back sometime. And
Oh, you're welcome.
again, thank you. And everyone, please go and check out Sue's training, check out her books. And if you are someone that is interested or needs some help with a child or a teenager or a parent or a partner, definitely reach out to Sue, and she can help you with neurodevelopment.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by StreamingGear.com and DeltaForce.net.